I do think that, my opponent, George Allen, is beat up on me because I supported the Recovery Act. But, Governor McDonald just announced a significant economic development deal in Richmond, Amazon moving to Chesterfield. And one of the reasons they picked that site was because of a road interchange project that had been built with Recovery Act dollars. I think a lot of the infrastructure spending that's been done is finally, people are seeing some effects of it. I also think there's a little bit of an uptick in confidence. We've been through a very, very difficult time, but Christmas sales were strong. We've seen some increased manufacturing activity. I talked to Virginia businesses like Norfolk Southern Railroad. They're seeing pretty good shipments, freight shipments. That tends to be a bellwether of some positive economic activity. There's still some weaknesses in the economy. One that's hard to do that we don't control is the European economic situation continues to have some challenges for us. Small businesses still have a hard time getting loans. I had a roundtable earlier today in Roanoke, and businesses of different kinds, but they all agreed that, boy, it's hard to get access to capital. Even if you have a track record as a successful business, banks are under intense pressures from regulators not to make bad loans, and that means that they don't want to risk at all, and that makes it tough for small businesses. So that's something we still have to fix, and we still have some room to go to fix the housing market. The housing market is still not strong, and that will continue to be a challenge. We got to work on that. Chris, it's about balance. There's an element of wisdom to it, but then government getting out of the way of a lot of financial institutions doing crazy stuff was what created the biggest economic meltdown in 70 years in the United States. There's a very powerful argument that a lot of the economic meltdown was, government made a decision, for example, in the late 1990s, that while we regulated a lot of financial transactions using the post-depression securities laws, we weren't going to regulate transactions involving derivatives. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission said we ought to regulate these derivatives just like other financial transactions, but Congress said, no, we're not going to do it. And then that was one of the precipitating causes of the financial collapse. So a lot of the challenges we've had were from an attitude of, well, we don't need to regulate anything. There have to be rules of the road. There have to be umpires who, call this is a fair practice and this is an unfair practice. You can't just have an environment where everybody just does whatever they want. You can't play a football game that way. You can't play a basketball game that way, and you can't have a complicated national economy run that way. So there is, you always got to make sure there's balance, and there can be regulations that are too heavy-handed, but rules of the road are needed. I would like to see extended through the end of the year. I think the payroll tax cut, I don't know that it needs to be made permanent. You would see when the economy is in a position of lift, then you wouldn't make it, I think it should be phased out. But I think the 2-month extension was good because it was bipartisan, but I think we need a longer term, and I would take it through the end of the year. Yeah, so I've done a 2-day kind of economics town halls and business roundtables from Winchester to Blacksburg, and seeing some positives. Virginia's unemployment rate is less than the national average, and the Valley's unemployment rate is less than the state's average. And some positives I'm seeing, but then I'm seeing some negatives too, so positives. On this talent economy idea, we're really leveraging our educational institutions, whether it's JMU, whether it's Mary Baldwin, whether it's Blue Ridge Community, the Massanutten Technical Center, or the Shenandoah graduate programs in medical education, allied medical fields. The Valley is really leveraging these educational investments in ways so that I see new technology businesses like the solar business that I just visited with here, or SRI up in Harrisonburg. Those are positive signs. Second, the traditional Valley economy has been agriculture and forestry. And a lot of people don't know it, but it's still true. Ag and forestry is still the #1 economic sector in terms of the size of the GDP of any sector in Virginia. And there are new opportunities in ag and forestry, especially around energy issues, that I think can help farmers find better opportunities for turning in small acreages and making them profitable. So those are some positives. Some negatives, I talked to people today, who are between jobs, who've had a hard time finding work. We're gaining jobs again as an economy. That's great, but we got a long way to go. And so trying to make sure that, opportunities don't just clump in Northern Virginia, but that we, create opportunities throughout the Commonwealth. That is a continuing challenge in Virginia and in the nation.